Wonderful. So we've got a bunch of people. Marie-Eve from Victoria. Yes, the situation is crazy and surreal, and something that in this information age and the age of the internet, we've never really gone through before. So this is going to be an opportunity for us to all learn how to manage um, stressors like this, how to manage a system that has essentially succumbed to this new normal, and how we can adjust, how we can create new opportunities, and actually figure out how, if this does happen in the future, how to make sure that we're protected from a financial stress and from a financial perspective. So I'm very excited today to introduce to all of you Brian Bogaert, an absolutely wonderful gentleman who is going to be very helpful in helping us learn about what financial health really looks like. Okay. I'm very excited to introduce him. And what we're going to do today, how we're going to structure today, is we're going to be having a bit of a discussion between myself and him, and I'm going to be taking questions from each of you. Feel free to type your questions into the chat box. If you don't know where the chat box is, right at the bottom of the Zoom window, you should see a bubble that is like a chat bubble. If you type on that, there should be a little window that opens up on your right side, and you can type in. You can type directly to me, or you can type directly to everyone, and you can ask any questions that you might have. And what we can then do is take this information and ask the questions to get you the right answers. And we'll be asking a lot of the questions later on in the Q&A component, but I'm sure a lot of them will come up during the talk, and I will bring up things with Brian as we go through this. Okay, so thank you all for joining. If I didn't introduce myself, which is something that I tend not to do, I am Dr. Navaz Habib. I am the founder of Health Upgraded, and I'm very excited to help you all take this step and understand about financial stress and what it is you can do in this current situation to prepare yourself to be able to handle the challenges that are upcoming. And I'm very excited to introduce to you Mr. Brian Bogaert.
Thank you, Dr. Navaz. I am really, really honored to be here and excited to chat with your community. You know, you and I were having a chat a couple of weeks ago and talking about the fact that this health crisis has turned into a financial crisis around the world, and that a lot of people are feeling stress about that. And then what happens in the body when that stress is created, and that, you know, like normally people will say, well, what's the point about worrying about something? It's not going to make anything better. But in this case, it can actually make things worse. And I mentioned to Dr. Navaz that I was watching a video earlier today by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who he said he's a fan of as well. And he was talking about what happens inside of the body when stress is present, and how that actually can decrease your immune system and make you more susceptible to bacteria and viruses and getting sick. And so that was how this sort of all came together. Was, you know, in this time that we have tonight, we want to try to alleviate some of that stress and bring some feelings of calm and hope and positivity, because goodness knows right now we're being surrounded and bombarded with negativity, and all hope is lost. And you know, and I saw in the chat somebody said, we're all going to get sick, you know, like that's what we're being told, and that's just causing stress, and then the financial side on top of it, and it's just a vicious circle. So that's what we're here to do tonight, and I'm honored that for all of you who have tuned in, and for all of you who are listening later on YouTube or on the recording. So let me start with who am I? Why on earth would you want to take time out of your Wednesday night to listen to this guy? Well, first of all, I'm going to start with what I'm not. I'm not a financial advisor or a financial planner. I don't have a degree in finance, and I'm not an accountant or anything like that. I am quite literally a guy who 16 plus years ago was working in the corporate world. And if any of you have seen the movie The Matrix, I was like Mr. Anderson in The Matrix. I had a good life, a life that a lot of people would be envious of, but it just wasn't working for me, and I wasn't satisfied, and I was desperately searching for a way out of that particular life, which of course in the movie turns out to be that he was living inside the Matrix. So I started searching for, just like in the movie Morpheus, who was going to help get me out of this. And it turned out the guy I was sitting beside, I was living in Calgary at the time, the guy I was sitting beside at work was investing in real estate. And so I started taking him out for lunch and picking his brain. And the next thing you know, we did a property together. And then we did a second one. And then, he'd been doing this with some family and some friends. I had just finished reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which probably a lot of you have. And so I said to him, let's start a company. And I think we should bring this information to more people. More people would want to learn how to invest in real estate. Long story short, we did that. We started our company in 2004. And 4 years later, because of what had happened in the Calgary marketplace, it skyrocketed and went up. We went to our partners and our investors and said, now's the time to liquidate and get out. They trusted us and they did that. And my partner and I were able to retire from our corporate jobs. And that was 2008. And of course, we looked like superheroes in 2008, 2009 when the financial crisis hit. So at that time, I made a promise to myself that I was not going back to that corporate world. I was going to find out everything I could about money and finance and leverage and investing. And why do some people become wealthy in any kind of economy and other people seem destined to suffer and constantly go through these cycles, one of which we find ourselves in today. So I spent the next decade doing that, including moving out here to, I live just outside Toronto, learning about all of this and investing myself, continuing to invest, to learn about business and these different things. If there's a seminar, I've probably been to it. If there's a book, I've probably read it. And then about 6 years ago, after a lot of prodding from friends and people that I'd work with about, why aren't you sharing this with more people? Like, you've learned so much about what's going on in money and investing. You should be like teaching and coaching people. So I decided to open up my own coaching practice, Next Level Success Coaching. And my whole thing about this, again, I'm not an advisor. I'm not going to try to sell you any mutual funds at the end of this call. I am literally educating and empowering people about money and finance and investments because my purpose is creating more freedom for myself and others. Okay, so there actually is nothing for sale on this call. We're just going to be talking about what's going on in the current marketplace, what makes sense for you, and what are some things that you can do. Okay.
So wonderful, Brian. I'm very excited to have you here. I'm so glad that we were able to connect and actually bring this information to my audience and to people that are really in need of some reassurance that there is a way to be able to manage this. If we were to look in the past, there's examples of this happening over and over, maybe not in the same exact way, but there are obvious examples of the economy taking a bit of a hit and what we can do to manage ourselves as we go through this. So I'm very excited to have you here. Thanks again.
Absolutely. And so priority one, and this is the first conversation that I'm having with my existing clients or past clients that are calling me or my friends and family and colleagues, is cash flow. Okay. So one of the most important things right now, other than your health, is, am I going to have enough cash flowing in order to be able to cover my expenses, feed my family, pay for my lifestyle? Okay. So if you haven't already sat down with pen and paper or Excel spreadsheet and gone through what is the money coming in, right? So income, and then the outflow. What are my expenses? That is number one and the first thing you should do. And I don't care, like, it doesn't have to be pretty. Don't worry about finding some special thing. You just need to sit down and figure this out with your partner, with your spouse, with your family, right? Sit down and figure out what kind of money do we have coming in over the next few days, weeks, months, and then what are our expenses, okay? Now, of course, this is where some of the stress arises, is that for a lot of you, and you know, maybe some on this call, that income is the first thing that is being threatened. There may be people on this call that have already found out that their job is not active right now, that they're not able to go to work, and that income is something that is being threatened at this particular moment or is very unstable. Now, there's other folks that right now it's okay and it's still coming in, but what does the future hold, right? That's the other side of it. So you want to sit down and as you're keeping track of that, you want to be looking for multiple sources of income, right? Do you have multiple places where you could be getting income? So there could be job income. If some of you have something like rental properties that are producing an income through investments, are there things that you could potentially be cashing in as a source of money in the meanwhile, right? Considering all of those different things, okay? And you also want to think about what could be possible. And this is a conversation that I've been having, especially with a lot of people who their main source of income is currently non-existent or threatened at the moment, is what else could I be doing to generate income? So let me give you a couple of examples. I've heard of lots of small businesses right now that are doing what we refer to as a pivot. Okay, so I was just talking to a good friend of mine. He mostly does a lot of consulting work in the US where he's going into companies and doing live trainings and that. So of course, what's he doing? And somebody on this call was mentioning it earlier, looking at doing it online. That's an example of a pivot, right? Where you can make an alteration to your business so that you can still continue to work and generate income. Another example that I heard of was there's a lot of restaurant owners out there who don't have a takeout or delivery, right? So they have storerooms full of food. They have workers that they can't employ. So some of them were making a shift where they were providing food or menus or drivers for companies that were able to do delivery. So now they were able to sell some of their inventory, continue to employ some of their workers, and provide a need right now, which is there are lots of people out there that needed access to food. Okay, so that was another example where rather than just throwing up your hands and going, well, what can I do? People were looking to pivot and provide different sources of income. I've even heard of people, ordering bakery supplies and baking and then selling fresh bread or pastries or something like that to people in their community and finding a way to deliver it since they're home doing nothing anyway. Okay, so I want to talk a lot about, and Dr. Navaz and I have had many conversations about this. Some of you are probably aware that the Chinese character for crisis is made up of two components. It's made up of danger, but it's also made up of opportunity. Okay, so you're not going to hear about too much on this on the news and on social media, but right now is a time of opportunity. Fortunes are also made in times of crisis. They're not just lost. So we're going to talk more about that as the call goes on, but that's something that I really want to reinforce for people and for you to think about is now's the time to get creative. Something that you've been sitting on for months or even years that you never had the time to do before or thought, I don't know if I really am ready to try this. This could be the time to try that. Write that book, start that new online business, right? There's all sorts of opportunity going on right now, okay? So that's one of the big things is income and expenses. Now on the expenses side, so first, some good news. There's probably some expenses that are going to go away in the short term, like gas, okay? Often people are spending $200 or $300 a month on gas. That could be an expense that drops away, right? A whole bunch of typical things, going out to eat, restaurants, that vacation that you were planning, all of a sudden you're going to have some extra money. Okay, so you really sit down and look at your expenses. There may be some other things that you can shut off, okay, or not be spending right now. Yes, I understand that there might be a lack of income, but in some cases people have that balanced in their expenses that can help that out a little bit. Okay, so that's also something that you want to consider is take a good look at expenses. Are there memberships you could shut off, things that you're not going to be using right now, especially small business owners who are often, you've signed up for things and now you might not be utilizing those things like a membership or a particular program or application that isn't applicable right now. Okay, so a second thing you really want to be examining is expenses. Now, obviously, for some people, that's not going to be enough, right? Maybe eliminating a few $100s a month on typical expenses is not going to be able to enough to balance thousands of dollars in income that they don't have available. So what do those people do right now? And this is, again, a huge source of stress and anxiety for folks right now. So most of us have heard about resources that are being announced, say, by the governments, by the banks, that sort of thing, that are becoming available, whether it's, taxes. You don't have to get in personal or corporate taxes. That's been delayed for a few months. Property taxes. Make sure you go on your local community site and check out announcements about property taxes. I know where I live in Durham region, there's been a delay of 60 days for property taxes. There's potentially $1,000 to $2,000 for some folks right there with something like that. Okay. Then of course there's mortgage deferrals and income relief and EI and a lot of these other announcements, and more announcements are being made every single day. Now, that is not the focus of this call. We're not going to go into detail about all those programs because somebody mentioned feeling overwhelmed. That can get overwhelming very quickly. I am not an expert in this area of how to make all these programs happen, but I am connected to folks who are experts in that area, and they are providing these resources, links, phone numbers, instructions, daily updates on what's going on with these programs. So if you are in a position where you don't know where the money is going to be coming from, or you're a small business owner and you've got a whole bunch of expenses that are due and business has dried up, there are avenues for you to pursue. And Dr. Navaz and I can make sure that you get connected with the people that can help you with those resources.
Yeah, Brian, I just want to add in that specific area. We have relevant information to both Canadians and Americans. There's no, I have people in the US that I'm connected to that know exactly what they're doing. And I have Canadian accountants that know exactly where to go if these are resources that you are interested in looking into and approaching. Please connect with me, message me directly, DM over Facebook, whatever, email me, whatever it is. And I'll make sure that I get you that contact so that you can get the right information from trusted sources as to how you can approach the coming inevitability, I guess.
Excellent. Great point. And so let's talk about this for a couple of minutes, because I have an expression that I like to use that says, the large print giveth, the small print taketh away. Okay, so some of these programs being announced, you really need to investigate them. You need to fully understand them. You need to realize, is this really going to be of benefit to you? And is this the right approach? Okay, because there's nuances to these programs. The other thing is, you're going to have to be patient and understanding. Probably most of us at this time have heard the stories about people being on hold for 2 days, trying to get through to their bank or to these government agencies about these different things, applying and waiting several days to find out the results. So you're going to have to come in with an attitude of patience and understanding. Millions, actually billions of people around the world are we're all in the same boat together. Okay, so just be patient. And feeling that panic and that anxiety and that worry, it's not going to help in any way, shape, or form. It's just going to leave you snapping at your loved ones and feeling stressed and not being able to sleep. And that is not helping you. It's hurting you at this point. Okay. Me personally, when I start to feel anxiety, I look for, what can I do? What do I have control over? And then I start to execute on that. Worrying about the 10,000 things that I have no control over, that's just going to keep me up at night and keep me stressed. Okay, so try to find things that you can do. If that's filling out an application for one of these programs, if that's going on hold and then doing other work in the meanwhile, right? Choose the things that you have some control over and then take action on those things. It always leaves me feeling better. Okay. So the next thing that I want to talk about is a little bit of a shift now. So, for some people, I recognize that right now it's the basics, right? It's money coming in, money going out. But then there are other groups of people that are in a different situation. They're actually doing pretty well, right? They're fairly financially stable. Either they have savings, or they continue to have income, or they have investments that they're able to draw on. Now, I fall into this situation. Dr. Navaz falls into this situation. So for those of us, we're able to look at a few other different things in the financial world. And I want to speak to those That would be my dog. Hang on one sec.
So sorry about that interjection, but I think this has been really valuable so far, and I love the approach that Brian's taking here to help get us some information. Just to kind of go back and quickly cover what he was talking about. Obviously, priority one being cash flow, making sure that we have enough coming in to cover that which needs to be going out, the expenses, and making sure that you adjust or pivot to ensure that there is some cash flowing in, whether it's adjusting what you're doing, making a little bit of money on the side, baking for friends, whatever it is, that can be very beneficial. Priority two is in regards to expenses and going through your accounts, making sure that there is something that you can eliminate, then eliminate it and get rid of the expenses that are unnecessary. I know I've gone through my accounts. I have a couple more things that I want to adjust and call. And I know I'm not going to be going into my office anytime soon. So I've called and they're giving me a 50% reduction on my rent for the next couple of months. So things like that can be very beneficial. It can save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars if you take the right approach. Number three, look into the available resources, Canada or the US. If you have a business, there's a lot of resources in making sure that you can make payroll. If you have an income that's been diminished because of being laid off or having lost your primary source of income, EI, looking into self-employment coverage, which does exist, mortgage deferrals, and property tax delays. These are all options for you to look into. And I think Brian's given us a very clear picture of what we have been able to look at here. And thank you so much. And I guess we can jump back into the new opportunities that exist.
Yes, and my dog Magnus gets very excited about these topics, so I apologize for that. He gets carried away sometimes. So the next thing that I want to talk about is by far the next biggest question that I get from clients and people that I'm speaking to is, so what should I do about the markets right now, Brian? Is now a time to buy? Is it a time to sell? Or is it a time to sit and wait? Okay. So first I want to talk about the stock markets, because that is by far what most people around the world are invested in. And then we'll talk about some of the other markets, including the real estate market and a couple of other fun ones too. So let's start with the real estate, the stock market. So chances are, and if there's any financial advisors on this call, you may want to cover your ears. Chances are, if you call your bank or your financial advisor right now and ask them what to do, they're going to say to you, oh, no, don't take your money out. We're already past the worst. Just leave it in. And, there might be a little bit of up and down right now, but we're going to be headed up again and on the rebound. And you want to be in there for, if you sell now, you've actually lost that money. But if you wait and go up on the rebound again, no problems. Everything is going to go back up to where it was. Okay, this is by far the advice everybody that I've asked that has spoken to an advisor or someone at their bank lately, this is the advice that they have been receiving. Okay, now I'm not going to say that that advice is wrong or that that's not the case, because honestly, I don't know. And in all of these conversations we're going to have, I don't have any answers for you about what the markets are going to do exactly. However, I just want to add some more information for you to be able to make an empowered decision on what's best for you. So here's the first thing that I want to talk about. Banks, investment companies, and advisors, they make money whether your money is going up or your money is going down. They still make money, okay? The other thing is, a lot of the money that they make are called trailers, and that is based on the amount of money that is being managed by the bank or the financial company. So naturally, if that amount of money starts to go down and starts to dwindle because people are taking their money out of those mutual funds and those stocks that they're managing, that means there's less money for them, okay? Now, it's just human nature that I'm going to want to put food on my table as well, and that's going to be my first priority. That's just human nature. It's not good or bad. But what I want you to understand out of this is the nature of the financial industry and the investment industry is the people working in that get paid to sell you into those investments. So of course, the the advice they're going to give you is stay in. Okay. So is that wrong? Not necessarily, but you just want to understand. It's like, you know, if I go to buy a car and the salesperson, oh, this is a fantastic car. I love this car. Let me tell you everything about this car. I also want to understand that this person gets paid if I buy this car, right? So that has to go into my decision making, and I need to understand that so I can make a more informed decision. And just understand that there are lots of advisors and financial planners who really do have their clients' best interests at heart. Okay, I'm not picking on this group of people. And the way that the financial industry compensation works, there are incentives for them to want you to keep your money inside of those investments. Okay, so just please understand that. Now, let's talk about, you know, what might the markets do in the next little while? Well, you know, Dr. Navaz, I have a question for you based on what you know. What you see going on in Canada and especially the United States, which, you know, are folks online right now from the US. I really feel for you guys and what's going on there. What do you think is going to happen with regards to the virus in North America over the next few weeks? Do you think, Dr. Navaz, that we're past the worst and things are going to start getting better? Do you think we've hit a plateau, or do you think that things are going to get worse in the short term?
Based on a couple of things that that I know from the research that I've been doing and the numbers that are coming out, we are far from the end of this. In fact, we're very much still near the beginning of it. The curve, regardless of where you are, unless it's China, is still kind of going in that upward trend, and it's really moving into a doubling up position very quickly. So we're very early in this as well. And what that means is we need to prepare ourselves for a very long slog, a long period of time in which this is going to continue. And just as a fun little side note, and I wouldn't say fun necessarily, apparently the reported numbers are completely inaccurate, and the numbers are actually significantly higher.
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't surprise us in any way, though.
Exactly. Of course, those are all going to be skewed for public viewing and that sort of thing. Okay, great. So I agree. I completely agree with you. I believe that, you know, if we're on the roller coaster ride, we're still here, and there's a lot more left to come. So next question that I have for you: what do you think is going to be the emotional state and the psyche of people in North America based on a lot more of a slog left to go?
This is going to be a very long time, and it's going to take quite a while for us to recover. And what that means is there's going to be an economic depression, absolutely, and there's going to be a decrease in our ability to kind of be resilient in this. And so this is going to be a real test for how resilient we can be, for sure. I imagine it's going to be at least 2 to 3 months before we're completely out of the rising numbers and out of the woods. And at that point, we're really going to be able to start to see what the effect of this really is.
Again, I completely agree. And so from that, the conclusion that I'm drawing is, you know, we saw how people in Canada reacted in the first week when you know, lockdowns and things started to happen, and it was fear and panic and hoarding and you know, acts of desperation, people buying, you know, a year's worth of toilet paper and this sort of thing. That was the psyche and the emotion of people based on that. Well, if we believe that we're not through the worst yet and we've got a lot more to go, then I would suspect that there's going to be more fear, more anxiety, more panic. And if we're not even close to the worst yet, that could start to accelerate, in fact, of the fear and the panic and the way people respond to that. So here's my next question for you, Dr. Navaz. In your experience, how do stock markets respond to fear and panic and anxiety and desperation?
2 words: not well.
Right. I would agree. Now, I'm not a stock investor. Okay. The smallest amount of my portfolio is in stocks. I don't have any mutual funds. And that was from stuff that I bought 10 years ago after the last financial crash that I kept around for liquidity purposes, which is a whole separate conversation. But I can tell you that I feel the same, that, you know, based on what I think is going to happen with the virus in the next few weeks and the emotional state, I believe, and I don't have a crystal ball. I could be wrong. I'm just telling you what, based on, historically, what typically happens in these types of cycles. I suspect that we have more drops yet to happen in the stock market. There could be crashes that make the first crash look like a walk in the park, okay, depending how bad this gets and what goes on, okay? So if I was a stock investor and I'm going to my bank or to my financial advisor and they're telling me, oh, no, stay in, or hey, now's the time to buy. Well, does that make sense to you if you agree with everything that Dr. Navaz and I are saying, and you also suspect that the worst is yet to come and potential stock market collapses could come with that, okay? So that is something that every one of us needs to ask ourselves and needs to examine ourselves. Now, again, advisors and whatnot will tell you, yeah, but if you don't sell, you technically haven't lost any money because you still own the stock. And you just need, even if we're going to go down further, you just ride it out and then eventually it'll come back. But here's my question. Does anybody remember in the last financial crash that there was major international companies that didn't survive, right? How many gigantic investment companies and banks, especially in the US, didn't come out the other side? And what about a lot of other companies, large and small, that either never recovered or disappeared completely? So that belief that if you can just ride it out and come back up the other side, that really depends on just how bad it gets, okay? So what does that mean? What is the option in that sense? Well, it's an option that is not what the banks and the financial advisors want to hear. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not telling anyone to do this. I'm letting you know that there are options and that you may have to seek guidance from other people other than people who are right now making money off of your investments, okay? So I can tell you that myself personally and what I've done with my family is to take what was remaining, or at least a portion of what was remaining of those stocks that I had, and I sold them and moved into cash. Okay. Now there's some people that think I'm crazy for that. There's some people that they'll tell you 10 reasons why that's not a good idea. But let me explain to you why I did that for myself. Okay. So I'm what's referred to as a value investor, and I tend to follow the philosophies of a guy like Warren Buffett, even though I don't invest in the stock market like Warren Buffett does. And Warren Buffett has, some of you know, rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2 is see rule number 1. Okay. And this is from one of the richest, most successful investors in history. Okay. His rule is not about making profit or riding out the tough times. It's do not lose money. So if I have 2 scenarios right now, one scenario is sell out of those stocks and mutual funds and get into cash. Well, some of the experts will say, but if it starts to rebound, you're going to start to miss out on that rebound. If we've already hit the bottom, things are going to start to go up and you're going to miss out on that. I understand that, okay? But what I've done is I've protected my downside. By selling into cash, I can't go down any further. I can't lose any more from my portfolio. And as things start to rebound and go up, was that a false rebound and now we have another crash? Or does it stall and sit there for a lengthy amount of time? As I start to see signs, kids going back to school, people going back to work, regular society starting to come out of hibernation and quarantine again, as I start to see those signs going on, then I can make a choice to get back into some of those investments. And some people will say, well, you're going to miss out on some of the rebound. I'm willing to take that risk because here's the other scenario. I stay in and my portfolio plummets, potentially going all the way down to 0. And like I said before, there may be companies that never recover from this. So I have a smoke detector for the same reason. I have health insurance and car insurance and airbags for the same reason, to protect me in moments of emergency and crisis. Why does that not exist in the investment industry and in the financial system? Why are there no protections, no insurance, so that if the worst happens, at least I know I'm covered? Ask yourself why that doesn't exist, and if there are things that you can do to create that for yourself. that's what I've done for myself, my clients, my family, and my friends. And for me right now, the best solution has been selling out of that and getting into cash so that if things get worse, I know that the money I do have is protected. Okay. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not telling anyone on this call to do that. I'm just letting you know that there are other options that you're probably not going to hear from your bank or your financial advisor.
I really like that, Brian. I think that clearly goes back to the priority number one of having that cash flow, having cash in case, and having it to make sure that your expenses are handled. Because if you don't have that cash, then what good is the investment going to be if there is a rebound? It doesn't mean anything. So I completely concur with that, and I thank you for that. And that was wonderful.
Exactly. Right now, cash and cash flow are the name of the game, and having reserves to be able to get through this, because, you know, while we're getting a lot of good news out of China, we really have no idea what's going to happen next, right? There could be a second wave. We could all be in quarantine and self-isolation for 6 months. We have no idea. So the number one priority is you need to cover your family and your situation. And that doesn't mean panic and worry. Do I sound worried? Do I sound panicked? Right? I have been taking action. I have been reviewing things. I have been getting information. And then I've been making informed, powerful decisions about what is best for my family and my situation without panic, without fear, that sort of stuff. That doesn't help matters. Okay? And the other people that I know of that have been doing the same, when they have taken that action, they've actually felt better. They've actually felt more empowered by, focusing on what is in their control. Okay, so that's one person's thought.
So that's wonderful. I think that's great. Yeah.
I apologize. I tried my headset before and it wasn't working. So
no problem.
If I have to, I'll throw him outside. My apologies for that.
No problem.
Go ahead and give a summary, Dr. Navaz.
So no, I think that's been really good. Obviously, if you are invested in the market, if there are investments that you have, they could be useful as a source of cash flow, and there's no real need to ride out the storm if the cash is available and necessary for you to use. If you have the cash flowing in and you don't need to liquidate, then the option exists not to. But please keep in mind that cash flow comes first. And if you do need some cash on hand, liquidating assets like something in the market could be very easy and very beneficial for you. And here's the key thing I think that Brian's trying to get to is having some sort of liquid asset in this financial situation is a beneficial tool to help with cash flow if you need to in the future. And so this could be an opportunity maybe in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, once everything starts to really rebound and we get back to some level of normalcy, that this is an opportunity for us to, if we do have some cash laying around, to be able to invest into creating almost like an insurance for that cash flow in a future cycle. And I love what Brian said, the word specifically in these cycles, because these are cyclical. We had this happen in 2001 with 9/11. We had this happen with SARS in 2003. Again, it was pretty quick, but not as severe. We had it happen in 2008 with the financial crisis. And now, essentially, if we look at it, it's almost every 10 years, something like this is going to happen on average. And so if we can prepare ourselves to have a little bit of cash lying around, the opportunity is there now to be able to prep ourselves for a future 1 or 2 or 3 of these.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Now, the next topic I want to get to, and some people may already be overwhelmed and be like, okay, that's enough. And I completely understand. If that's the case, you can, go back and listen to this. But I want to make sure that we address, questions and ideas and thoughts that I've been getting over the past couple of weeks in talks like this. So the next thing as well, and sound financial principles and investment principles dictate this. You should always be looking at your portfolio and reallocating depending on the situation and depending on your current goals anyway. This is something that financial planners and advisors will even tell you. There's always reallocation going on. So for me personally, I'm not just going into cash and then leaving that to sit there and wait. I am actually starting to examine other types of investment options, which are not as subject to the same level of volatility that I see going on in the stock markets. Okay, so one of those things, which honestly I've been investing in for 16 years now, is real estate. Okay, so you know, I love real estate as a wealth building vehicle. There's a quote out there sometimes said by Andrew Carnegie: more millionaires have been made in real estate than all other forms of commerce combined, including businesses. And he was a business magnate. Okay, so real estate, it's fascinating and very lucrative when it's done in the right ways. Now, I'm not going to get into a whole thing about how to invest in real estate. That's separate. But here's what I want to say right now. A lot of people are asking me, Brian, what about in the real estate market? Is now the time to sell? Is now the time to buy? Again, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't know what's going to happen. However, I can choose to look at this historically and cyclically, just like Dr. Navaz was saying, and that is going to help me understand what could be going on, which then allows me to see opportunities. So again, Dr. Navaz, if you would humor me, I want to ask you a couple of questions, okay? So what was happening in the real estate market here in the Greater Toronto area at the beginning of the year?
The craziest boom, and it stayed at a very high level. It didn't really flatten out like people were projecting it to. It was insane and
Yes.
Just growing.
Yes, and to start this year in January and February, things were starting to go back up again, and there was a lot of predictions that we were going to have an amazingly lucrative real estate market again. Now, do you know what's been going on in the last month with you know what has happened here in Toronto? Are you aware of that?
Besides closing on my condo, I don't know much.
So I work with a lot of realtors and a lot of real estate professionals just by the nature of what I do as a money and wealth coach, and I can tell you that right now the real estate markets in the GTA have gone from going up to mostly flattening. Some are still seeing some price increases, but more and more we're getting reports on prices flattening. And that makes sense. What is not happening right now in the real estate market due to quarantining and physical isolation and that sort of thing? Oh, sorry, that was a question. Do you know what's not going on right now?
Yeah, so I know I had a couple of conversations with real estate agents, and they were saying that showings have decreased because nobody wants to let people in their house and people are scared to get out. I had a conversation with another one who said that they were really busy because they were closing on all of those things as the market was rising, but they've definitely hit a wall, and there's not a lot of interest and there's not a lot of movement.
Right. So
right now.
What that equates to is there's not a lot of buyers out there in the market right now. Okay. And that makes sense. People are not just hoarding toilet paper. They're also hoarding their cash. They don't want to take a risk right now. They don't know what's going to happen in the real estate market. So a lot of those people that were ready to buy have suddenly backed off. Well, let me ask you something. Do you think that there are people in the real estate market right now who have to sell?
I'm sure there are some. And especially because to get to priority one again, they need some cash.
Exactly. There are, you know, if you saw the statistics ahead of time of what was going on in the real estate market in Canada, you know, a lot of people were already close to the line. And you know, in these times, things are going to get worse. There's also just reasons for, you know, people are moving, job changes, all sorts of different things that force people to have to put their house up for sale. Okay. So if we have lots of sellers still and we have very few buyers, what does that do to market prices?
Yeah, and that's very specific then. High supply, low demand, and we're going to have the prices decrease, and
Exactly.
a cyclical event again.
Exactly. Okay. And this is just straight economics. This is not, you know, me prophesizing about what's going to happen. This is just straight economics. Okay. So because of the lack of interest, that's going to force prices to go down. There are definitely going to be sales that have to happen. Another example, you know, I have bought several pre-con condos, which I know you have also done as well, Dr. Navaz. So there are going to be builders out there that currently have inventory that they need to sell. Okay, yes, they might put a hold on new projects and starting of new things, but there is still a ton of units out there and projects that they need to sell. That's the same sort of thing. There's going to be, prices are going to have to come down. This starts to create new investment opportunities. For all of you out there who have wanted to be a real estate investor or have done a little bit and wanted to do more, or were already starting to get ready for your next opportunity, there is going to be opportunities aplenty in the next few weeks, in the next few months. And I want to be clear, I'm not talking about being predatory here and taking advantage of vulnerable people, okay? I'm talking about people who want to sell, are able to lower the price, and they are still going to be walking away with money, all right? And you are going to be purchasing a property for below market value, which is cash flowing, so you can get it through these difficult times, okay? That is what is referred to as a win-win transaction. And there are going to be win-win transaction opportunities out there for the people that are educated, the people that are in a good position in terms of their own financial situation, and who have the courage to act. Warren Buffett has an expression. He says, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. Now, I don't like the term greedy right now around that. So the way I'm saying that is be ready to act when others are fearful, and watch on the sidelines when others are greedy, okay? We have seen a period of greed in the real estate market. Now we're in a period of fear. This is when opportunities present itself for those that are willing and able to act. Okay, so this is an example of having access to some of that cash and reallocating what you have been investing in. There are going to be other opportunities which are less volatile, right? They actually offer greater returns. And you know, I can come back one day and talk about real estate as an investment if you want one day, or reach out to me if you have questions, because this is, you know, something I've been doing very successfully for 16 years. Okay, so that's an example of what becomes possible and the sort of opportunities that present themselves in these markets for those people that are in a position to act on them. Okay. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about quickly and just give it a presentation, because I know this is, you know, this is a big subject for people, but it also falls under that, that line of opportunities. But before I did that, Dr. Navaz, was there any specific questions about real estate or anything like that that you wanted to ask?
I haven't seen any specific ones. I think based on the Toronto market being as hot as it was, do we expect, and probably not in the short term, but in the longer term, have there been any previous occurrences where the market spiked pretty quickly afterwards as well?
So good question. I'll tell you this, because I used to be part of a national real estate investment group when I first moved here to the GTA 13 years ago. And after the crash in 2009, guess how many months it took before Toronto prices got back to where they had been pre-crash?
It's a great question. I'm going to guess about 6 months.
Actually, you're even more optimistic than the real numbers. It took almost exactly 12 months to get back to pre-crash prices. Now, that was in Canada, and that was in Toronto, which is one of our hottest real estate markets. I know in the US, it was a very different situation.
Yeah.
Okay. But here in Toronto, the housing market pre-crash, crash, right back 12 months. Okay. Now, is that what we're going to see here? No, nobody has any idea. But here's what I know about real estate. Regardless of what's going on in the world, people still need a place to live. Okay. And you know, are we going to see foreclosures because of this? Yes, probably. Are we going to see bankruptcies? I've heard statistics out there that there will be more bankruptcies than deaths across the world because of the financial crisis that's going on along with this. Okay. So unfortunately, there will be people who are in dire straits, but there also will be opportunities to help some of those people. Anybody who knows someone who's gone through the foreclosure process knows it is an ugly, painful process. And if an investor is able to come in and purchase a property, usually at a discount, and take care of any, you know, extra charges, they're actually doing that person a favor in some cases to get them out of the foreclosure process. And I know some people who did that in the US after 2009, and they had the homeowners actually thanking them, because it was going to be a long, hard road for them where their credit was going to get killed, you know, and to be dragged through the foreclosure process. And they were able to at least walk away with a little bit of money or break even and then be able to start over again. Okay, so again, this is not about being predatory and taking advantage of people. There will be opportunities that are presented. And you know, one person's dire situation can be helped out by somebody, and it doesn't have to be a saintly kind of transaction. It can actually be something that winds up as an investment for you. Okay. So on that note, the sort of last topic that I want to talk about in terms of opportunity is something that I've had my eye on for the last year and a half, and I've been learning about, and I've been researching and investigating and going to sessions, because that's when I find something new that I'm interested in investing in, I do research. I'm a due diligence guy, and I want to understand that thing that I'm investing in. And sometimes my research will tell me, don't invest in that. Okay, and then I walk away, but I'm glad that I did that up front. So for the last year and a half, I've been heavily investigating cryptocurrency and the opportunity there. I started to invest with a private group, and then about 5-6 months ago, I went to an all-day session in Toronto and was blown away with what I saw as an opportunity in cryptocurrency. Now, of course, I said to myself at that session, when I go home, I'm going to do more research, and I'm going to, you know, just on my own, privately invest in some cryptocurrencies. And I did nothing, as is typical with most of us when we attend seminars. Well, guess what I did last week? Based on everything that was going on and what I'm going to explain about some concepts, I opened up a trading account, a Canadian trading account. I moved money across, and I bought my very first private cryptocurrency, not through this group that I was investing with. And the reason I did that is because crisis generates need and new things to look at. So here's why I find cryptocurrency interesting. Number one, it is not controlled by any government, any country, or any small group of individuals. The whole reason why cryptocurrency was invented was to get out of that system and have a completely digital system which no one group or small group of people can control. It is a purely commerce-driven system. In other words, everybody in the system is what is causing it. You know, we talk about capitalism and socialism and all that. There actually isn't an example of one of those isms going on anywhere. Cryptocurrency is one of the closest things to what happens to a system when everybody participates and there is no governing body on top of it that is manipulating it. Okay? So, doesn't that sound interesting in a time that we're at now, where we're seeing government crackdowns and you know, banks trying to control flows of money and investments, and people are talking about, well, they'll just start printing money, and you know, that's how we're going to get out of this mess. Which leads me to point number 2. Cryptocurrency is not an inflationary currency. So what that means is you don't just inject more of that money into that currency to thereby drop the price. Cryptocurrency doesn't have that as part of it. I saw that pop up. Bitcoin is one example of a cryptocurrency. Okay, just like the Canadian dollar is an example of currency, Bitcoin is an example, or a specific example, and the most popular one that everybody has heard of cryptocurrencies. There are actually hundreds of cryptocurrencies, but even the people who are in cryptocurrencies, most people can only name Bitcoin. Okay, there are lots and lots and lots of them, and I'm not going to get into why. But what I wanted to just introduce to this audience tonight is there are new things out there. Okay, so if you think about a completely digital currency. Oh, and the third thing about cryptocurrency, you are in control of your cryptocurrency. It's actually designed that way so that you have your own wallet. That could be a digital wallet, or it can even be what's called a paper wallet. The currency, the actual amount of cryptocurrency funds that you have reside with you. There is no bank. There is no middleman that you have to go to get access. It's your money, and you're the one that's managing it. And then there's something called the blockchain, which I'm not going to get into. But what I want to say about that is it is a 100% transparent transaction recording system. So everything that happens gets loaded up to the blockchain, and all of the people participating in that particular blockchain can see it. So there's no more where the bank is offering you 2% and they're off making 19% on credit cards, right? You're going to know what those transactions look like. So the middleman or woman gets eliminated. Okay? So We have a true international currency, which can't be manipulated by governments or countries or a small group of individuals. It is not inflationary. You are in control of it, and it is transparent in terms of the transactions. Do you think that sounds like an interesting option in today's day and age with what's going on right now? And this is why I opened that account and started doing what I was doing. As Dr. Navaz and I were talking about earlier, given those things that I just described about cryptocurrency, do you think that the popularity of cryptocurrency is going to rise, stay the same, or flatten out over the months and years to come, given people's feelings and emotions and thoughts about our current financial and investment system?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I honestly, based on the fact that we know that currencies can be manipulated by governments, and we've seen that happen, and we know that if we can trust ourselves and trust kind of what's going on, you can definitely see cryptocurrency more than likely is going to raise in value. And that's something that might be a very good investment opportunity if you are able to take on that opportunity. And I imagine there's, with any investment as there's a level of risk, but it's probably a little bit more calculated and a little bit easier, especially when you do your due diligence to see where the opportunities lie.
Well, you just brought up a great point, and I mean, we could easily stay here and talk for 3 hours with all the conversations I've been having and things people are wondering about. But I wanted to address one thing quickly. You just said risk. If you actually look up the word risk means uncertainty, right? When I invest in something, there is a risk of it going up and there is a risk of it going down. People automatically assume that risk is the negative side only, and it's not true. Okay, risk just means uncertainty. If risk didn't exist, there'd be no point in investing. Okay, because if I took my money, if I gave someone $1,000 and they were just going to give me $1,000 back a year later, what's the point of doing that? The whole point with risk is there's a risk that it'll go up or down. And then it's up to us to do our due diligence, to understand, to do research, right? And those types of things in order to determine, do I think there's more of a risk of it going up or going down? Are there actions I can take to protect the downside so that at least I'm not going to lose the capital that I started with and not lose money, as Warren Buffett would say? So the interesting thing with cryptocurrencies is you still have to do diligence on that. It's not whether it's less risky or more risky. I mean, there's horror stories in the cryptocurrency world as well, as which I'm sure some of the people here have heard about or what have you. So it's not like this is the safe alternative that we should now all be flocking to. It's just that it's a completely different model, which some people, myself included, believe there's been some improvements on the existing model. And the other thing is cryptocurrency has kind of been practicing social isolation on its own, right? Because so few people are in it, it's not as tied to the economic systems and everything that's going on with the stock markets that, a lot of other investments are. So it's kind of isolated over here on its own right now, which is also why I'm interested in it, because, I'm looking for investments that are not going to get dragged down in the near term with more fear and panic and that sort of thing. And that's, how I really want to wrap this up tonight. And then, if we do have any other questions. So the whole point of this talk and what I do with my coaching practice is I just provide information to people. I let them know the kinds of things that I'm doing. I try to explain them in the simplest terms possible and provide people with choices. Because in my world, when I have more choice, I have more freedom. Okay. And honestly, that's what money provides me. Money is not the be all and end all. Money is kind of useless. If you don't believe me, take a bag of money and go on a deserted island and see how far you get with your bag of money. It's not going to be of any value to you. But in our society, money provides me with choices. And we have no greater example than what we see going on right now with the people who don't have access to money and cash flow, their choices are limited. And those of us who do are in a more stable position and have some cash and a little bit extra that we can invest with, we have more choices. When I have choice, I feel more calm. I feel more relaxed. I've got time right now, right? I'm not at work. Some of you are at home with the kids and your spouse. grab some time to do some research. There's all sorts of free courses out there. Lots of people, myself included, doing programs on these types of things. Now is the time to take advantage of the situation that we have, to educate and empower yourself, find out what's best for you based on your goals, what you want to accomplish. And I thoroughly believe, and this is my plan for myself, I can thrive through this crisis time that's going on right now and come out of the other side actually as good or better than when I started, and be positioned to, take off like a rocket with what I'm going to be doing financially. And that is the message that I really want to give to the listeners and the people listening to the recording here, that is absolutely possible as long as you set your mind to it and focus and shut out the negativity and the noise and the gossip and the rumors and the statistics, because none of that is doing you any good, especially health-wise and financially.
This has been wonderful. A couple of quick questions as we'll get into those in a moment. I just want to wrap up our recording here before we get into those questions. And I want to thank you very much, Brian, for joining us today, for sharing how we can improve our financial health, to improve our stress levels, to help take care of those things, because our stress levels are definitely a major hit. And we know that when we have increased stress and we're unable to kind of manage that stress, our health will suffer. And if we have a poor functioning immune system because our stress levels are so high, then we are more susceptible to the effects of things like COVID and however many other infectious diseases there are out there. We need to ensure that our bodies are functioning well. And a big component of that is to ensure that our stress levels are managed and we are taking care of ourselves. So if there is a way for us to get our finances under control, to manage that stress in some way, shape, or form, not let it take on a whole meaning of itself and eat at us too much, then we're going to be putting ourselves in a position to not only battle the coronavirus or whatever it is that it is hitting us, and really be able to thrive once we do come out of this economic decline that we are expecting. So I'm very excited to be able to share that with everybody. And thank you so much again, Brian, for being here.